1 2 3. Яаж вэ? Байна уу? Орж ийн үү? 1 2.
1 2. За хэдэн секундээр орж иж байна?
За би юу санаглаа шүү.
Тэр камерыг хасаж.
Ой санаглаа шүү.
Биш шүү дээ. Тэр дэлгэцээр.
За санаглаа. Хай дөрөвний 1 2 удаа.
Тэгэхээр хэдэн секундээр орж иж. Тэрийн тав яасан уу? 15 секунд.
15 ч. За санаглаа. Ард дуудаж байна уу?
Бартан шинээр тоглолт.
Манайхан усныхаа дуудыг хаагаарай.
Би яг хөө
тулга тэгээд ингэ шүү тулга. Би энэ дээр дарга яриад эхлэн штэ. Тэнгууд ингэж тийш өгч шүү. Юу шинэн дээр энийн дээш нь харуулаад тавьчихсан. Ui, hiç
For your information, this meeting is being broadcast live through the English YouTube channel of Seoul City. So may I ask that you take care to keep your camera and network connection stable during this meeting and pay special attention to your microphones.
Android сэнэглэгч power bank байна уу? Зүгээр Android-ын сэнэглэгч power bank байна. Мантха одоо яаж вэ? Бэлэн биж эхлэх чинь шүү дээ. Тэг дэлгэцрүүгээ өгөөд байна. Яг би нэг ийш даргын суугаар нэг барина ийшээ. А би барих хэрэггүй шүү дээ. Эндээс барьчих байгаа юм шиг. 50 болгоод те. Бүтэн өчрөхгүй шүү дээ. Чи яаж дарга яг голлуулаад аваарай гэж байна. Гамбад яаж хийлээрэй. Голлуулаад Мөн үү? Гэсэн цагаан ийм анзаанд барихад тий сарч ойртуулахаар амьсгаа тийм ингэж барил. За яг одоо кё утгын дараа ярьж байна. За ирээний хагуулганд бол тэрээр бол одоо болно. Сэж байгаа ойртуулчих хэрэг. Алин санаа. Яг тогныхаа хоёр тугааж ойртуулах юм уу? Шинзо. Манай гамба хоёр тугааж өөрөө жоох. Хоёр жоохон газ ягаар нааш олон улсын юунд шууд харагдаж байгаа шүү дээ хоёроо. жоохон хувц.
Хитрхи ойлголцтой надад. Яг ч ингэж хитрхи байна. За тэгээд яваад тэгээд дахиад жагаад. Надад одоо жаа яваа юу? Экстра харчихсан.
Юм дэлгэсэн дээ. Нэлээ. Газ хардаа гамба. Гүй юу юм? Гүй тэр юу power bank. Power bank. Чэнзо. Дэше гүгээд power bank аваад ирж. Миний өрөөнд байгаа.
Good morning. Welcome to the mayoral meeting, the opening event of Cities Against COVID-19 Global Summit 2020. I'm Nassimyon, and it is my honor to be your moderator for today's meeting. First of all, I would like to thank the representatives of some 40 cities around the world who are attending this virtual international conference. The entire global community is afflicted, directly or indirectly, by COVID-19.
Эхлүүлээ штэ.
Today's meeting will serve to bring together our experiences, efforts, and ideas in fighting COVID-19 and further promote city-to-city cooperation and solidarity in responding to infectious diseases. We will begin with a keynote speech by Mayor Park Won-soon of Seoul, the host city. And afterwards, we'll hear about the experiences and know-how of 4 cities, namely London, Maryland, Jakarta, and Moscow. And finally, we'll discuss ways on how cities can cooperate for a joint response to new infectious diseases. For your information, this virtual conference will be broadcast live via the English YouTube channel of Seoul City.
За нийслэмд та бүхэнд мэдээлэл хүргэж байна. За яг одоо дэлхийн хотуудын дарга нарын чуулсан COVID-19 сар дахлаас урьдчилан сэргийлэх арга хэмжээний талаар мэдээлэл солилцох, харьцан туршлага солилцох онлайн форум эхлэхэд бэлэн болоод байна. За энэ удаагийн форумын тухайд бол бас өөрийн онцлогтой. За дэлхийн 40 гаруй хотуудын хотын дарга нар оролцож байгаа. За 22 хотын дарга бол өнөөдөр бас илтгэл мэдээлэл солилцох юм байдалтай байж байгаа. За Сөүл хотод болж байгаа тус арга хэмжээнд бол нийтдээ 22 хотын дарга мэдээлэл солилцсон. За гол нь бол коронавирус цар тахлаас урьдчилан сэргийлэх арга хэмжээ хотод хэрхэн авч хэрэгжүүлж тухай мэдээлэл. За ингээд Сөүл хотын дарга нээж байна. За Сөүл хотын даргын мэдээллийг манай гадаад харилцааны мэргэжилтэнд та бүхэнд орчуулж мэдээлэл хүргэнэ.
I would like to welcome and thank mayors from all over the world for joining us today.
За ингээд дэлхийн нийтээр оролцож байгаа энэ өглөөний мэнд өдрийн дараа мэнд гэж би та бүхэнд хэлмээр байна. Энэ хуралчуулганаар бид та бүхэнд COVID-19-тай яаж тэмцэж байгаа талаар хоорондоо ярилцуулна.
Of humanity is sweeping every corner of the world, resulting in more than 6 million confirmed cases and of 350,000 deaths around the globe until now. So even worse, nobody knows when this battle will come to an end. Fortunately, some countries, including Republic of Korea, are managing to overcome the pandemic relatively well. Although
Дэлхийн
this
улс
battle
хотууд
is ongoing, still,
энэ цар
our
тахлын
efforts
эсрэг
send out a
босч
hopeful message.
арга хэмжээ авч
Humanity is able
байгаа.
to surmount this unseen disaster. So now is a time to share such hope with others.
Одоо ингээд бусадтайгаа өөрсдийнхөө
5 years ago, actually,
туршлагаасаа ингээд хуваалцах бэлэн байна.
Korea experienced the outbreak of birth. This unfamiliar infectious disease flowed from the Middle East. Almost a total of 186 infected cases and 38 deaths. So we learned an important lesson from this torment. Transparency and promptness are silver bullets for infectious disease. And excessive response is better than sluggish response. So based on this
COVID-19-тай тэмцэхийн тулд 3 принципл гаргаж ирсэн байгаа. Хурд, нөгөөх нь болохоор ил тод байдал, тэгээд шинэлэг байдал.
So by sharing information in transparent manner, we help ease citizens' anxiety and increase them to participate in our containment efforts. This was then accompanied by our innovative ideas. Our anti-epidemic measures like walk-through and drive-through screening centers, emergency task force, mobile health check-up app are now being recognized as
Энэ хуцаар тахалтай тэмцэхийн тулд ил тод байдал чухал. Туршлагаасаа хуваалцах ус мөн чухал. Солонгосын засгийн газар бол нэгдэж үнэтэй тэмцэж байгаа.
Another important pillar is mature citizenship. Citizens were not only an object of anti-epidemic measures, but also the main actors of them. So,
За иргэдийн оролцоо бол энэ чухал.
in social
Бүгдээрээ
distancing, by voluntarily wearing face masks,
иргэд өөрсдөө хариуцлагатай байж оролцох хэрэгтэй.
and practicing self-quarantine. So I can safely say that citizens are a cure for the city of Seoul. Third, the global solidarity and cooperation. Since Seoul kept the COVID-19 situations under control, we made a donation of medical supplies to our sister-friendly cities who are struggling with the pandemic. For the cities who want to learn from Seoul's experience, we have willingly shared our disease control expertise and helped them purchase reliable medical supplies. So in today's highly connected society, the only option for us to save each other is through solidarity and cooperation. Nonetheless, this battle against the pandemic seems unlikely to be over anytime soon. The post-coronavirus world will be completely different from the one before. There, city governments should come forward and take the lead. In fact, the UN estimates that more than 2/3 of the world population will live in urban areas within 10 years from now. The fourth industrial revolution is coming right around the corner on our journey to a hyper-connected society. But the recent COVID-19 outbreak reaffirmed that the more the civilization is developed, the more powerful impact the infectious disease brings. So the easiest way to prevent an intercity virus spread is lockdown. However, this may be a solution
За
only
энэ хүү
for
цар
short-term
тахалтай. Энэ хүү цар тахалтай тэмцэх хамгийн гол ач холбогдолтой зүйл гэвэл хөл хориотой байх шаардлагатай. Яг гэвэл нийслэл хүмүүс ихсэх тусам аюул илүү их болж байгаа.
Suggest all the municipal governments to join our concerted efforts to respond to the pandemic together. So the municipal government should strengthen the capabilities to fight disease like COVID-19 by sharing our own knowledge and practices to each other. To cope with disaster of future infection, even after COVID-19, Seoul aims to build a new standard by
Дэлхийн
improving
40
our
гаруй хотын
capabilities in three main areas: healthcare, infrastructure, and social systems. So first, healthcare capability. Korea's COVID-19 control and prevention efforts are often described as 3T model: testing, tracing, and treating. So we were able to prevent large-scale
Солонгосын хувьд бол тестинг, тэгээд 3 3 арга хэмжээгээр
However,
энэ хүү ковидтай тэмцэж байгаа. Нэгт тест хийж шалгана. Дараа нь шалгаж үзнэ. Тэгээ дэмжлэнэ.
first step for future cities to properly respond to infectious disease and disaster. So second, Seoul will enhance our urban infrastructure. Every metropolis is required to have the urban infrastructure that is sufficient and systemic to overcome disastrous and official critical situations.
Хотын хөгжлийг дагаад арга хэмжээнүүд бас өөр байгаа. Метро болгон шалгагч гэх мэтчлэн
Of emergency transport system, the manufacturing facilities and capacity of advanced medical equipment, along with smart city technologies like IoT and big data. So on top of that, we also have to have an alternative urban infrastructure based on non-contact technologies in order to maintain ordinary life in times of crisis. So will improve legal and institutional capabilities to overcome and cope with disaster.
нөхөө цар тагалтай тэмцээн тул хуулийн хэмжээнд арга хэмжээ авах гэж байгаа.
So more often than not, crisis hit the vulnerable harder and deeper, inevitably worsening social inequalities. So therefore, it is imperative to make an effort to safeguard the vulnerable and underprivileged, more so in times of crisis like this, and ultimately address social inequalities. When disaster is prolonged, citizens are more likely to be at risk. To prepare for this, it is vital to establish solid legal and institutional systems assuring income, healthcare, and jobs. Such solid foundation will help minimize damages in times of disasters and serve as fundamental force to restore our ordinary life. It is challenging to create one standard that fits all the cities with different features and characteristics. Cooperations among municipal governments is essential so that we can all share our abundance and fulfill each other's need. When we work hand in hand through the darkness, we will find the light. When we work together, we can make the way. So the first step towards that way is to share our wisdom and experiences and to cooperate in human and material resource support between cities and countries. We should first start by pulling together in order to overcome the current COVID-19 pandemic. As some of you may know, with the launch of an online platform called CAC, Cities Against COVID-19, Seoul has been sharing our experience and updates regarding coronavirus. Since its launch in April, it has already recorded almost 7 million views. And today, I'm very pleased to kick off the virtual CAC Global Summit with this mayoral meetings. I extend my warmest welcome to my fellow mayors and governors, also those who are watching this online. I'm very grateful for your interest and participations. Taking these opportunities, Seoul hereby proposes to build an intercity network on the tentative name called CAAP, Cities Alliance Against Pandemic, in order to brace for future disasters and infectious disease outbreaks with joint efforts of our partner cities. Cities will take the lead in overcoming the pandemic and shape the future of humanity. Please join us in solidarity to open up a new chapter of the post-coronavirus era. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Mayor, for your keynote speech and for your main message that if we are united, we can overcome COVID-19, including the feared second wave. Next, we will hear 4 case presentations, starting with London. The UK has been the epicenter of the outbreak in Europe, and the country just started to ease lockdown measures. So if London is connected, we would like to ask the Mayor, Sadiq Khan, to present his presentation. It seems that we are having some... London Mayor Sadiq Khan is on standby. Mayor, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. I'm delighted to have the chance to take part today. It's great to see so many familiar faces and friends of London joining from around the world. I want to begin by expressing my deep gratitude to my friend, the Mayor of Seoul, Park Won-soo, not only for his insightful and engaging speech, for organising this summit and for the global leadership his city has shown since the start of the pandemic. And this event is a perfect example of the international leadership that's desperately needed right now to contain the virus and prevent it from inflicting further suffering on our citizens. So thank you, Mayor Park, for everything you're doing. As the Mayor of London, I'm proud to endorse the Seoul Statement, a document which codifies our shared commitment and demonstrates our clear resolve to work together so we can stop the spread of this virus, protect the health of our populations, and emerge stronger from this crisis. I've always said I want to be a mayor who builds bridges, not walls, because fundamentally, I believe we achieve far more together than we do alone. And nowhere is this more apparent than when it comes to tackling a global pandemic, which by definition is a monumental challenge that transcends continental, state, and city boundaries. It's for this reason I welcome the emphasis on solidarity and cooperation in the communique, as well as a proposal for an inter-city network. This will allow us to fortify our defences against infectious diseases and maintain the social, economic, and cultural links that are so integral to our success and our shared prosperity. As you'll be aware, London has been hit hard by this pandemic. The virus has had a devastating impact, causing huge pain and grief, just like many other cities around the world. I'm pleased to say that as a result of the monumental efforts of Londoners, we now appear to have come through the worst of this third wave, with the number of new infections being reported down drastically. However, I'm far from complacent, and I want to make sure we're doing everything possible to prevent a resurgence. Now is not the time for us to take our foot off the brake, or we risk leaving ourselves vulnerable to a second wave. And that's why I've been at pains to stress to Londoners that even as our government makes adjustments to the restrictions to give people greater freedoms and to enable some to go back to work, we must still follow public health advice to the letter. My administration is continuing to urge all Londoners to avoid public transport unless it's necessary and to adhere to social distancing rules. To encourage people to continue to work from home where possible to stop the spread of the virus, and to walk and cycle to workplaces instead. We're calling for supermarkets to stock non-medical grade face coverings at a reasonable price to make them accessible to all Londoners, and many are now doing so. And we're also supporting the implementation of the Test, Trace and Isolate programme, which, as we've seen from other cities around the world, including Seoul, is a vital tool to overcome this disease. We've also procured hotel rooms for rough sleepers, created new walking routes and cycling paths for Londoners, and launched a crowdfunding scheme which allows Londoners to buy goods and services in advance from small businesses to help them stay afloat during the lockdown.
To invite Governor Larry Hogan of Maryland to give his presentation. Maryland just reported this past weekend that COVID-19 hospitalizations have dropped to their lowest level since mid-April. Governor Hogan, if you are ready, you have the floor.
Well, thank you very, very much. Thank you, Teresa. Thank you, Mayor Park, for hosting us. It's such an honor and a privilege to have the opportunity to talk with so many distinguished leaders from around the world. I want to thank you for that opportunity. Let me, before we touch on the topic that we're all here, and I think it's wonderful, the cities against COVID have united to talk about this issue. I know that some of you have been following the goings on in American cities over the past several days. I just wanted to say how proud I am of our city of Baltimore last night, where we had thousands of people protesting very peacefully without any violence or destruction. And it was really, I think we set an example for the rest of the cities in America, and just wanted to say that to start out. But I'm the chairman of the National Governors Association, so in that role, I lead all of America's 50 governors, 55 when you include the territories and the states, and we work very closely with all of our cities and counties, all of our municipal leaders. This COVID crisis obviously is something that every one of us has been dealing with and trying to figure out the solutions to. In America, the governors have been taking the lead along with our municipal leaders rather than the federal government, and we've been focused on this from the very beginning. I can tell you that in my particular case, the state of Maryland is in the middle of the heart of the mid-Atlantic region surrounding the nation's capital here, close to Washington, D.C. We had our first case on March 5th, about 90 days ago. We had a couple of tourists that were traveling on an Egyptian cruise up the Nile River who came back with the disease. We now have 54,000 confirmed cases. nearly 2,500 deaths. And we've been focused on this day and night for the past 90 days. Really, we've been focused on four primary kind of building blocks that I think many of you also have probably been dealing with. This crisis has involved, first of all, we've been focused on very early and aggressive actions. Taking action quickly. We declared a state of emergency the very first day, shut down our schools and many of our businesses, and put in stay-at-home orders. That really helped us get a handle on keeping it from being as bad as it was in other places on the East Coast, like New York and New Jersey. But at this point, we're starting to come down the curve with respect to our number of cases, with the positivity rate. But it's still a big issue. We've done about 350,000 tests. We have testing, contact tracing, hospital surge, and PPE have been our four things that we've been focused on. Testing, we've done about 350,000 tests. It's about 5% of our population. I want to again give a shout out to our hosts from Seoul. We were lucky enough to negotiate the acquisition of 500,000 tests from a Korean company that has really helped us. So we want to thank them for their cooperation. With respect to the PPE, the personal protective equipment, we've been sourcing that from companies all around the globe. And it's in America, the federal government hasn't really been acquiring those things. It's been the states and the cities who've been out on the open market trying to find all of the things that we need. But we've been ramping up our hospital surge capacity. We added 8,500 hospital beds, including opening up closed hospitals, putting hospitals in our convention centers, and any number of things to expand that capacity, especially with our intensive care beds and bringing in ventilators. The personal protective equipment has been a real struggle here in most places around America, maybe for many of you in other countries as well, with not having enough masks, not having enough gowns and protective equipment, not enough swabs, transport mediums. Lots of little things that don't seem like they should have been a problem have been a tremendous problem for us. But America's governors have been working very closely together. We normally are just running our own individual states. In this case, we've been now having meetings together like you're having here today on a weekly basis, sometimes twice a week, often with the president and the vice president. We also have meetings with our local leaders, with our city and county leaders on a weekly basis. So I think this communication amongst and between ourselves is terrific. I know that the theme of your conference here is Together We Stand, and I couldn't agree more with that. I think we have to be all in this together. It does take the cooperation of in our case, the federal, state, and local governments all working together. We're all in this together. We're not going to beat this virus without everybody's hard work and cooperation. But we've been really focused on clear, honest, direct communication. Our decision making has all been based on the facts and the science. We've put together some of the smartest scientists and doctors in the world, many of whom are in our state. We're the headquarters of the NIH, the FDA, Johns Hopkins University, and a number of other world-renowned medical science institutions, and we've been tapping into those folks to try to make the best decisions. We're now moving on to trying to slowly, safely, and gradually reopen our economy, because that's the next crisis we're all dealing with: unemployment, business failure, the fact that we had to take these aggressive steps to shut down to stop the virus. And we're now in the phase where we're beginning that slow, gradual, and safe reopening, which I think many of you are dealing with as well. So I just want to thank all of you for all the wonderful, incredible work that you're each doing in your cities. And I want to thank you for giving me an opportunity to come on to represent the National Governors Association and my fellow governors in America. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Governor, and we wish you the best of luck and also hope for peace to return to the cities of the USA, including Baltimore. Thank you very much for joining us. Next, we will hear about the example of Jakarta from Governor Anies Baswedan. May overall was the toughest month yet for the largest country in Southeast Asia, but Jakarta seems to have turned the corner, with the number of cases decreasing since passing a peak in mid-May. Governor, I understand that you have some visual material prepared as well. If the PDF is ready, I will turn the floor over to you now.
Thank you. First of all, allow me to express my appreciations for the invite to join this important gathering of leaders across the globe, especially my appreciation to Mayor Park, a very good friend of ours and one of our role model for leadership in the cities, and for all governors, mayors whom we admire. Allow me at this moment to share a little bit of our experience. Yes, indeed, Jakarta experienced quite a trying times since the beginning of March. We had cases of COVID in the large number at the beginning of March, and almost 80% of cases at that time was in Jakarta. And our numbers back then were so high that we were quite concerned. We started to adopt large-scale social measures in the beginning of mid of March. We closed our schools. We started to do all this, the tracing, testing, as well as treatment. Quite similar approach to what many of us you all have been doing during this pandemic. But what I would like to share here is more of how should we look forward. I mean, we all have our experience in dealing with the pandemic, and I think it is very important for us now to look what's beyond this pandemic. In the past 6 months, many of us were struggling to save our fellow citizens, to make sure that we can get back to our life again and a new normal. But allow me in this opportunity to share some thought regarding how do we move forward. Jakarta, starting this weekend, we will start easing up our large-scale social distancing measures. But what's also important, during this period of 3 months, we experienced problems, but also we have experienced opportunities. The problems is at least two. Number one, we have health crisis. Number two, we have economic crisis. I think all of us experience that. But on the other hand, we experience a digital life breakthrough. And also, we experience a greener environment. This meeting could have been done a year ago, could have been done 6 months ago, but we didn't do it. We had conventional gathering of mayors in a certain area, in certain cities at certain times. But because of this pandemic, suddenly we started to see new opportunities, digital life breakthrough, and also greener environment. For us in Jakarta, air pollution is one of our challenge. And suddenly, in the past 3 months, we experienced blue sky every day. And people started to realize, so this is what it feels when we have greener economy. This is what it feels when we have implemented sustainable economic development. So this crisis, the health crisis, the economic crisis, those are issues that we need to tackle, but also our populations is experiencing a transformations that we never expected a few months ago. So now, I think it's for all of us to start sharing new values about how we manage our cities. In the past, for example, in a developing country like ours, a megapolitan like Jakarta, we were developed through car-oriented development, minimum public transport. And then we transform ourselves from car-oriented development into transit-oriented development. We built public transport, we built stations, we built properties surrounding the stations. So transit-oriented development is our approach. But now, I think we need to start to think of the next step, from car-oriented development to transit-oriented development, and then next, I think we will need to move into digital-oriented development. That may be the future we need to anticipate. And then in the past, our approach was monocentric development. We have transformed ourselves into polycentric development. I think in the future, we may be heading into microcentric development. And about services that we provided to our citizens. We move from under-provided basic services into well-provided basic services. But given this pandemic, what's needed is not only well-provided basic services, but what's needed is resilient urban services. It's a transformations that we need to undergo given the pandemic that we experience. Bisa ditunjukin. And if I may share some of the slides about these transformations, and I think let's see if we can get the bukan itu slide-nya di sini. Nggak bisa ya? Okay. Let's just focus on me sharing the instead of the slide. Let me just explain because there is a technicality issue here. But again, I think we need to look beyond the COVID pandemic. We need to start seeing this as an opportunity to transform how we lead a city, and also to transform the city itself to anticipate similar challenges that may come up in the future. So if I may put this in sequence, we need to, number one, make sure that this is a pandemic-proof city. And then we step forward one more step to resilient to crisis city, a digitally advanced city, and sustainable and livable city. So the approach that we need to undertake is somewhat different. This pandemic, for some reasons, have given us an opportunity to make the transformations. And the other aspect that I'd like to share, based on our experience in Jakarta, when we started to adopt large-scale social measures, that means restrictions of economic activity, restrictions to social and cultural activities. And because of that, we suffer loss of incomes to many of our populations. For those who have no savings, this is an issue. Of course, government provide support, government provide subsidies. However, we take this opportunity to introduce large-scale social solidarity programs. So on the one hand, we have social distancing measures being adopted, but on the other hand, we adopted a social solidarity program in a large scale. And the message is that I call for the business leaders in Jakarta. I don't call them to donate to our populations, but we call them for duty. And the message goes along this line. Jakarta has given us so much. Now Jakarta needs you. And our message is, let's pay back to our city. Let's give back what has been given to you from our city. So the calling is a calling for duty to give back to our cities. And we were overwhelmed by the response. We have charity organizations that we invited them to participate, to channel people that would like to contribute, to support our fellow citizens. What happened is these charity organizations has reported to us that the number of donors have increased more than 220%, even though the amount of donations is much smaller than when it was 100% of donors. So the numbers of donors increase, but the amount of donations significantly reduced because of the economic crisis. But the message is this: social distancing doesn't mean distancing between people, distancing between socioeconomic class, but it becomes a measures of building solidarity within the city. And I think this is something that we need to strengthen after we completed our approach in the next week. We would like to make sure that the solidarity we're building in the past 2-3 months is something that we can pave stronger to the future. So those are some of our experience. If I may summarize, this has been a crisis of health and crisis of economic, but also provided us with opportunity to transform our city, to transform our leadership, and we need to look toward the futures where digital-oriented development may be the way to the future. Microcentric development is perhaps the approach in spatial planning, and we need to move from simply providing basic services to our citizens. We need to move into resilient urban services that we provide to our citizens. And the last point is social distancing measures that is adopted in the large scale need to be paired with large-scale social solidarity. If that is able to be done, I think we will be seeing a better cities, stronger cities, not only for us who have experienced this pandemic, but also to all cities across the globe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for sharing Jakarta's experience and also for summarizing your presentation. Thank you very much, Governor. And last but not least, I would like to invite Mayor Sergei Sobyanin of Moscow to present his city's response to COVID-19. After more than 2 months of lockdown, measures are starting to be eased now, and Moscow residents are allowed to go for walks starting yesterday. So Mayor Sobyanin, you have the floor.
Dear colleagues, good afternoon. Our governor, mayor of Jakarta, he told us about solidarity. I can see here on the screen people, and they took this responsibility to fight COVID-19, to fight in the cities where they rule, and they are heads of the cities. These are the people who felt this pain and suffering of the people who live there, who faced this disaster. What's more, they did their best to make effective efforts and to overcome the peak of coronavirus. This is solidarity. This is solidarity of people who overcame the most difficult path. Moscow is the biggest city in Russia, the biggest mega city in the world and in Europe. Here we have almost 20 million people living, and traditionally it is a center where roads are crossing from the east and from the west, from the north parts and from the south parts. When we had here COVID-19, when it just started, lots of people, foreigners, came back to Moscow. And sure, when they came from territories which were affected by this epidemic. But because of the measures that we have taken, the stringent measures, we were very successful and we prolonged this period. We didn't have the peak period when most cities had. It gave us opportunity. We managed to learn from other cities. We saw what are the measures that were implemented in Europe, in United States, in Middle East. We looked at their hospitals, what were the restrictions, what was effective, what was not, and we take it into consideration every time when we work with it. We formed the biggest medical support system, and we have more than 40,000 available beds for it. It is an effective system, and we had all that was necessary to provide help for our citizens. What's more, we had outpatient clinics, and they were equipped with the best equipment to diagnose COVID-19. We created necessary test system, and today we have all the capabilities. So during one day we can have 58,000 classic tests. We formed clinical committee, and the leading experts from Moscow are part of this effort, and they developed state-of-the-art technologies to treat it. We supported all patients who faced coronavirus and people who were at risk. It allowed us to flatten the curve. We didn't have the peak numbers, and our systems were not overloaded. So these capacities that we created in Moscow, 55% of them, they were not used. The situation that we have, we avoided the worst scenario. And the work during this period allowed us to form clear techniques and directions which we follow. First of all, our citizens are responsible, and they understand that it is their personal health and it is the health of people who they communicate with and meet on the streets. It is very important, and I would like to say that I agree with the mayor of Seoul, Park Won-soon, that it is the most important part when we fight with COVID-19. People, they should be responsible. The second direction of work, when our employees understand their responsibilities, they realize that it's not maybe necessary to close all enterprises, but they had this clear picture that this pandemic, it's not about weeks, it's not about months, and we needed to provide our citizens with all the necessary services during these difficult periods of time. It will not be just 1 week, 1 month, it will be a few months, and they understood it, that we needed to adapt to this danger that we faced. So responsibility of employees, sanitary requirements to provide safe workplace, it is also very important. The third direction of work, our colleagues have already discussed it. This is the safety of public transport. We have not closed metro and public transport. We made it maximum comfortable for our citizens. We didn't want to create the situations when this public transport is overcrowded. We created this system to disinfect the transport so they feel safe, and we wanted to avoid the infection spread. So all the basic enterprises and our transport, it was functioning during all the time, every day. Approximately 3 million people were commuting, 83 times lower than before, but still, this is a huge number of people, and we were functioning. And sure, what is also important, that we developed necessary methods how to treat patients, and as I told you before, new tablets, new methods were created, and we were analyzing all the cases that we have. When we had death, we were critically involved in it. We suggested new methods how to prevent new cases. We worked with the Ministry of Health, with the World Health Organization. This is a great experience that we had, and we now know how to save lives of other people based on this work that we have done. Today in Moscow and in our country, in Russia, we develop through vaccines. They are very promising. In our city, we have clinical trials, and we see that it is a very effective work, and we hope that in autumn we'll have new versions of vaccines, and it will be the ground for our further work to fight COVID. But before this period, we need to provide special regime for our citizens so they are safe in our city, so they can work safely, so they can commute safely, so our city is alive and prosperous. It is true that Moscow, we see that more and more enterprises are working and opening. We see that non-food retail, food retail, it is coming back to work, construction, industries. Today, 80% of economy in Moscow resumed back to work. But still, we do understand that this pandemic, when we compare it to local disease right now, it's different. The whole world is facing this danger, and we all have this responsibility to prevent further spread. We are all responsible, and only together we need to join our efforts, and only with this we can win. Thank you, colleagues, for this communication. It's crucially important. It is always important, but now it is even more important because today we are under these circumstances. Sometimes the situation is tragic in most of the cities. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Sobyanin, for sharing Moscow and Muscovites' various efforts regarding COVID-19. We will now continue with an open discussion for other participating mayors and governors. The remarks will be made in the order of those who applied in advance, and if you also have some visual slides ready, please have them on standby. May I also remind all speakers to keep their remarks within 2 minutes so that we have time for all 16 cities. First, I would like to ask the mayor of Bilbao, Spain, Juan Mari Aburto, to deliver his remarks. The floor is yours, Mayor.
Hello, everybody, and good afternoon from Bilbao. Thank you, Mr. Park, my friend, for this initiative that tries to enforce collaborative relations among cities. It's a great opportunity to show how cities have been on the front line of the fight against COVID-19 and have been key actors, not only in the emergency phase, but also in the recovery and the new normal we are already going through. What we have been through in recent months has shown us how important it is to work together, to cooperate. Peer learning from each other has been more necessary than ever to confront this critical situation. Many questions and uncertainties need to be addressed as cities emerge from pandemic. Mobility, digital divide, social cohesion, employment, sustainability, education, health. Answering these questions will determine whether cities can better adapt and become more resilient. This crisis has brought to light that some groups of citizens are more vulnerable, and our societies need not only to protect them, but also to empower them so as not to leave them behind. Government, but by putting people at the center, is now imperative. Emerging vulnerabilities can only be tackled by a recovery planning that strives to put equity, economy, and climate action at the center of their approaches. In this sense, the city of Bilbao is committed, and our governance is based on a project we have been working on for years. We call it Bilbao City of Values. This initiative has been implemented by Bilbao City Council, taking into consideration the voice of citizens and of different entities in the city. It is an innovative project which intends to continue with the construction of the city from a shared framework of values provided by society as a whole, where values play a strategic role as a driver of more sustainable development in these threefold: social, environmental, and economic. We will be happy to share our experience with all the cities. In this regard, I'd like to convey to all the mayors and authorities that you can count on Bilbao to work shoulder to shoulder to build better cities for the future.
Thank you very much. We were supposed to connect with Montreal, and unfortunately, we're going to try to retry that later. For now, I would like to call upon the mayor of Ankara, Turkey, Mansour Yabashi, to deliver his statement. Mayor, the floor is yours.
Colleagues, first of all, on behalf of the people of Ankara and myself, I would like to extend my sincere respects and greetings to you from the capital of Turkey. I'm glad to come together with my esteemed colleagues on the occasion of Global Cities Summit against COVID-19, with the initiatives of my dear friend, Mr. Park, the mayor of Seoul. Within this period, Seoul's measures and success against COVID-19 outbreak have set an example to the cities all over the world. I also congratulate them both for organizing this online meeting and their exemplary work during the pandemic. Until now, many problems concerning the whole world, such as global warming, climate change, hunger, poverty, and wars, have not affected everyone without any discrimination like the COVID-19 outbreak had. Today, we are facing a very new situation. We have to act both quickly and together. For this reason, I attach great importance to every effort to prevent the spread of the outbreak and save the lives of more people. It is also a great honor and privilege for me to find an opportunity to come together with my esteemed colleagues from various continents of the world and discuss what we can do in the future. After the outbreak became global, as Ankara Metropolitan Municipality, we have implemented a series of globally known measures, such as public transport measures, disinfection of common areas and public buildings, closure of parks, rearrangement of business hours, postponement of rental payments, water bill discounts, flexible working, etc. However, I would like to share some of our outstanding implementations with you here. Since the majority of those, unfortunately, who died in the outbreak were people aged 65 and over, we called for them to stay at home, and by following this call, our government imposed a curfew on these people. This measure was one of the reasons why the death rate is quite low in Turkey. We allocated all of our municipal resources other than the urgent and compulsory expenditures to social aids. Within this period, not only the poor but also the employees and small businesses in the middle income group were adversely affected. Both financial and food aid was provided to these people through the crisis desk we established, and their hygiene and other needs were fulfilled. The need for masks and disinfectants that emerged with the outbreak were satisfied by producing them in the workshops established by our municipality. On the one hand, employment was provided to those who lost their jobs, and on the other hand, these products were distributed to the public and to our employees with free of charge. By the means of the One Heart campaign we launched during outbreak, citizens and non-governmental organizations of Ankara have been encouraged to donate. Thereby, approximately $5 million have been collected until today. Within the scope of combating against coronavirus, we have established a platform called Capital's Initiative for COVID-19, emphasizing local solutions for global problems, and asked more than 40 capital cities and our sister cities to share their measures and experiences. My dear colleagues, this outbreak once again reminded us the importance of acting together, solidarity, cooperation, and common mind without any discrimination. As cities where more than half of the world population lives, we need to work together and cooperate to solve the economic and social problems that will emerge after the epidemic in the next period. In this context, the city of Ankara will be honored to be a part of the Global Cities Network planned to be established under the leadership